Let me ask you something that might shake you a little. How does a nation that was once written off as poor, divided, and struggling suddenly rise to stand toe-to-toe with the biggest powers on earth? How does a country, once dismissed as just another developing state, now sit at the center of global conversations, dictating terms, influencing economies, shaping technology, and commanding respect on every continent? That nation is India, and its rise is not just impressive, it's shocking to those who never believed it was possible. See, most of the world thought India would forever be a land of contradictions, millions in poverty, political chaos, endless challenges. But while the world underestimated India, India was quietly building, working, and strategizing. It was not making noise, it was making moves. And in 2025, those moves became too powerful to ignore. What looked like weakness turned into resilience, what looked like chaos turned into creativity, and what looked like slow progress turned into unstoppable momentum. Today, I want to reveal to you the untold secrets of how India became so powerful, secrets the world never thought to pay attention to, but which now explain why India stands tall as a rising superpower. When you look at India today and wonder how it became so powerful, you have to go beyond numbers, beyond statistics, and beyond the visible progress of technology and economy, and instead go back into the roots of its civilization. Because the first untold secret of India's rise is not what the world sees on the outside, but the resilience, wisdom, and deep foundation of a culture that has survived thousands of years of change, invasions, and global shifts without losing its core. This is what makes India unique. Most nations build their identity over a few centuries, but India carries the weight and the blessing of millennia, a continuity of civilization that has always reminded its people that no matter how many storms come, no matter how many powers try to suppress it, India will rise again and again. Civilizational resilience is not just a phrase, it is the lived reality of India. Think about it. This is a nation that has seen empires rise and fall around it. Colonizers loot its wealth, neighbors attack its borders, yet it still stands with its culture, its languages, its traditions, and its spiritual backbone intact. That resilience was forged over time because India always found strength in diversity. Where others saw differences as weakness, India learned how to make them its power. Different religions, philosophies, and communities came together under one roof and coexisted for centuries. This capacity to absorb, to adapt, and to integrate gave India the unique ability to bend without breaking, to evolve without forgetting its roots. That's the first untold secret, India's ability to survive anything. And not just survive, but turn every challenge into a stepping stone for renewal. Another layer of this civilizational wisdom lies in India's spiritual and philosophical traditions. While the world chased material power, India understood that real strength begins with the mind and the spirit. Ancient texts, philosophies, and practices like yoga and meditation taught Indians discipline, patience, focus, and resilience long before these became fashionable in the West. This inner strength shaped leaders, entrepreneurs, scientists, and thinkers who were not easily shaken by external pressure. When the foundation of a people is built on inner discipline and self-mastery, they can weather storms without collapsing. This explains why even in the hardest times of colonization and poverty, India never lost its identity, never gave up on its dream of self-determination, and never accepted defeat as final. When you observe India's rise in the modern world, you might think it happened suddenly, but in truth, it was this ancient resilience that quietly prepared the soil for growth. A nation that had endured for thousands of years was bound to rise again once it had the tools of modern education, technology, and global trade. India's civilizational memory gave it patience, a long view of history. While others played short-term games, India was willing to play the long-term game. This is why its rise today looks unstoppable. It has waited for this moment for centuries and has built the inner foundation to handle it. So civilizational wisdom also gave India a unique model of leadership. While many countries built power through domination, India built influence through coexistence and moral authority. It never aimed to conquer the world through force, but through values, ideas, and cooperation. That is why Indian leaders, even in modern times, often speak the language of balance, peace, and unity. This is not weakness. It is the strength of a nation that knows its real power does not come from crushing others, but from inspiring them, from setting an example. In a world where raw power often fails, this kind of civilizational strength gives India a different kind of respect, one that cannot be easily shaken. And perhaps the most important part of this secret is the mindset it created among Indians themselves. A people who inherit thousands of years of history carry with them a sense of destiny. They know they belong to something bigger than themselves, something that will outlive them and continue rising long after. This gives them a resilience at the individual level that translates into collective power. It fuels their drive for education, for progress, for building businesses, for contributing to science, and for leading in global arenas. It is not only about personal success, but about carrying forward a legacy that stretches back thousands of years. So when the world asks how India became so powerful, the first untold truth is this: it was never just about modern reforms, never just about government policies, and never just about economic reforms. Those were only the tools. The real engine was the civilizational resilience, the cultural wisdom, and the spiritual strength that allowed India to absorb centuries of pain and still rise stronger each time. This is a power no foreign policy can match, no enemy can destroy, and no external influence can control. It is the invisible force that continues to drive India forward, making it one of the most powerful nations of the 21st century. If you want to understand how India became so powerful, you cannot ignore the second untold secret, which is the unmatched energy of its youth. Demographics are destiny, and in a world where many powerful nations are aging rapidly, India stands out as a nation bursting with young energy, creativity, and ambition. More than half of its population is under the age of 30, and this has created not only a massive workforce, but also a generation of dreamers who are ready to break old barriers and build new opportunities. This is not just about numbers. It is about the quality of a population that is hungry to prove itself, to innovate, and to put India on the global map in every possible field. The demographic dividend has given India an edge that no amount of foreign aid or external partnerships could ever match. While countries like Japan and many in Europe face shrinking workforces, India has become the center of global attention because it can supply not only workers but leaders, entrepreneurs, and thinkers. The energy of the youth fuels startups, powers the IT industry, drives research, and even strengthens the armed forces. It is this youth that fills the classrooms of engineering and business schools, that builds apps and technologies which the world adopts, and that pushes the boundaries of what an emerging nation can achieve. The young population is the force behind India's innovation, behind its growing economy, and behind its rising global influence. One of the reasons this youth power has transformed India is the change in mindset. Previous generations were more focused on survival and security, but today's Indian youth think in terms of ambition and possibility. They are not satisfied with doing small jobs. They want to create companies, build brands, and lead global organizations. This shift has produced countless startups, unicorns, and global leaders. The Indian youth has also become a major force in shaping global technology. From Silicon Valley to Bangalore, young Indians have shown that they are not just participants, but leaders in the digital economy. This confidence and ambition is a big reason why India's rise looks unstoppable. Another factor is adaptability. Indian youth have grown up in a country of contradictions, urban and rural, tradition and modernity, poverty and growth. This has given them a unique ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances, to think creatively when resources are limited, and to push forward even when systems are slow. This adaptability has made them ideal not just for India's growth, but for global challenges. When you take Indian youth into any environment, tech, medicine, management, or military, they thrive because they know how to navigate complexity. This resilience and flexibility has become one of India's biggest advantages in the modern world. The demographic dividend also strengthens India's soft power. Young Indians are not only staying in India, but also moving abroad, taking with them culture, traditions, and skills that make India more visible and respected worldwide. Whether it is in Hollywood, global sports, top universities, or multinational corporations, young Indians are leaving their mark everywhere. This global presence of youth becomes a bridge of influence, expanding India's reach beyond borders and strengthening its identity as a rising superpower. The more Indian youth succeed abroad, the more respect India commands at home and internationally. But this power is not just about economics or technology. The young population has also changed the way India sees itself politically and socially. Young people are demanding accountability, pushing for reforms, and rejecting old limitations. They are more connected through the internet, more aware of global trends, and more determined to shape the future rather than accept the past. This energy forces governments, businesses, and institutions to move faster, to modernize, and to adapt to new expectations. In this way, the youth are not just beneficiaries of India's rise. They are the driving force behind it, constantly pushing the nation forward. The global powers understand this, which is why they watch India carefully. A country with over 1 billion people, most of them young, ambitious, and skilled, is not just another player. It is a force that can tilt the balance of global power. No matter how many alliances or strategies are built against it, the sheer energy of India's youth ensures that the country will not slow down. This is a secret that often goes unspoken because it is not as visible as a missile or a skyscraper, but it is the most powerful engine behind India's transformation. So when we talk about how India became so powerful, we must recognize that it is this demographic dividend, this massive energy of its young population that has given it the ability to outpace older economies, to dominate global industries, and to set the stage for long-term growth. India's youth are not just the future, they are the present, and they are the reason why the world cannot ignore India anymore. When we talk about how India became so powerful, one of the most untold secrets is the silent digital revolution that reshaped the entire nation from within and positioned it as a technological powerhouse on the global stage. For decades, the world underestimated India, imagining it only as a country of call centers or outsourced IT support. But what unfolded over the last 2 decades is something far greater. India built one of the most advanced digital infrastructures in the world, one that even superpowers did not expect. From creating a unique digital identity system for over 1 billion people to transforming the way citizens interact with money, governance, and services, India turned technology into both a tool of empowerment and a weapon of strategy. The foundation of this revolution was Aadhaar, the biometric identity system that gave almost every citizen a digital ID. This was not just a number, it became the backbone of digital governance, allowing even the poorest villagers in remote areas to access banking, healthcare, and government benefits directly. No country in the world had ever attempted such a massive digital inclusion project, and India pulled it off. This was followed by the Unified Payments Interface, or UPI, which turned India into a cashless society faster than anyone predicted. Suddenly, people in small towns and rural markets were scanning QR codes and making digital payments, while even advanced economies like the United States were still relying heavily on credit cards and checks. The scale and speed of this transformation shocked the world and made India a global leader in fintech innovation. But the digital revolution in India was not just about payments or IDs. It was about creating an entire ecosystem that connected people, businesses, and governments in ways that reduced corruption, increased transparency, and boosted efficiency. With digital platforms, subsidies went directly to farmers without middlemen. Entrepreneurs in villages could sell products across the country, and students could access education online at almost no cost. This democratization of technology meant that power was no longer concentrated in cities or elites. It spread across the nation. This inclusivity is one of the biggest reasons India became so powerful. Because true power comes when millions rise together, not when only a few prosper. On the global stage, India's rise in technology has been equally impressive. The nation's IT giants like Infosys, TCS, and Wipro established India as the world's back office. But soon after, a new generation of startups began reshaping the narrative. Flipkart, Ola, Byju's, and countless unicorns showed that India was not just a service provider, it was a creator of innovation. Bangalore became known as the Silicon Valley of Asia, and Indian engineers became some of the most sought after talent across the globe. This shift changed how the world viewed India, not as a follower in the tech race, but as a competitor, and in many cases a leader. India's digital revolution also expanded into space and defense technologies. With missions like Mangalyaan, Chandrayaan, and the development of indigenous satellites, India proved that it could achieve high-tech feats at a fraction of the cost of the West. ISRO became a global symbol of frugal innovation, delivering world-class results with limited resources. In the defense sector, India invested in indigenous missile systems, drones, and cybersecurity infrastructure, ensuring that its rise in technology was not limited to civilian use, but also strengthened its national security. This technological independence became a shield against global pressure, allowing India to stand its ground in international disputes. The social impact of this digital revolution cannot be ignored. A young, connected generation emerged that was no longer confined by geography or limitations. Through cheap data and smartphones, India became one of the most connected countries in the world, with millions of people gaining access to knowledge, ideas, and global opportunities. This connectivity sparked creativity and innovation at a scale never seen before. Musicians, artists, teachers, and entrepreneurs found global audiences without needing traditional gatekeepers. The digital space became a platform for India's youth to express themselves and show the world their capabilities. This soft power, amplified through technology, became another layer of India's influence on the global stage. What makes this revolution an untold secret is that it happened quietly, without the drama of military conquests or massive wars. While the world was busy looking at China's factories or America's military power, India was quietly building a digital framework that empowered its people and prepared it for the 21st century. Today, when other nations struggle with outdated systems, India has leapfrogged into the future with platforms that are scalable, inclusive, and efficient. This silent revolution is one of the strongest reasons behind India's transformation into a rising superpower. So when people ask how India became so powerful, the answer lies not only in ancient wisdom or military modernization, but also in the way it embraced technology and turned it into a weapon of progress. India's digital revolution is proof that true power in the modern world does not come only from guns or tanks, but from data innovation and connectivity. And this is where India has built a foundation so strong that no global power can ignore it anymore. When we talk about how India became so powerful, one of the untold secrets that the world often overlooks is its mastery of balancing tradition with modernity. This is not just a cultural advantage, it is a power in itself. Most nations, when they step into modernization, abandon their traditions, lose their sense of heritage, and let go of their unique identity. But India did something extraordinary. It embraced technology and globalization and innovation without letting go of its centuries-old wisdom, culture, and philosophy. It found a way to merge ancient values with futuristic ambition, and that balance gave it a strength that the rest of the world underestimated for decades. You see, tradition without progress makes a nation stagnant, and progress without tradition makes a nation hollow. But when you have both, you create an unstoppable force, a civilization that doesn't just chase development, but does it with a soul. India has achieved this balance with precision, and that is one of the secrets behind its rise to global power. Take, for example, how India approaches education. On one hand, it produces some of the finest engineers, scientists, and doctors in the world through institutions like the IITs and AIMS. These institutions are deeply rooted in global scientific knowledge, cutting-edge research, and advanced technology. But at the same time, India never stopped valuing its Vedic knowledge systems, Ayurveda, yoga, and philosophy. While one arm reaches out to artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and space exploration, the other grounds itself in meditation, spirituality, and holistic living. That is why India's rise is not just material, it is spiritual and intellectual at the same time. This balance makes it harder for the world to break India because its foundation is not only on what is new, but also on what is eternal. You can see this balance reflected in India's economy as well. India is home to some of the largest tech companies, IT services, and startups that are redefining global commerce. Yet, it still values small family businesses, local craftsmanship, and traditional industries that form the backbone of its economic resilience. While multi-billion-dollar firms like Infosys, Wipro, and Tata Consultancy Services compete globally, millions of small shops, local weavers, and traditional farmers keep the cultural and economic fabric alive. If one side falters, the other sustains the nation. That is why India is not as vulnerable to collapses as economies that are solely dependent on one type of industry. This dual structure of economy, balancing global capitalism with indigenous trade, is another reflection of how India thrives in both worlds at once. Even in its political and diplomatic stance, India has shown this rare ability to stay modern and traditional. It participates in the world's biggest technology and defense summits, builds strategic partnerships, and leads innovation in clean energy and digital connectivity. Yet, its leaders consistently remind the world that India will remain rooted in its values of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, meaning the world is one family, while the West plays power games and often shifts alliances for temporary gains. India sticks to its civilizational principles. This makes it more trustworthy to developing nations who see India not as a new empire builder, but as a partner who understands their struggles. By holding on to ancient diplomatic philosophies while adapting to 21st century realities, India has positioned itself as a leader the world cannot ignore. This balance extends to how India deals with global challenges. When the world panicked during health crisis, India relied on its pharmaceutical advancements and mass production capabilities to provide vaccines and medicines to more than 100 countries. But at the same time, it also promoted yoga, meditation, and Ayurveda as long-term solutions for building immunity and mental strength. No other nation has been able to blend modern healthcare with ancient wisdom at such scale. This dual approach not only saves lives, but also builds trust and influence in every corner of the globe. Even in defense and military strategy, India combines the wisdom of its ancient war philosophies with cutting-edge technology. The strategies of Chanakya, the military doctrines found in ancient texts like the Arthashastra, still shape India's long-term thinking, while modern scientists build hypersonic missiles, stealth drones, and space-based defense systems. This fusion of timeless strategy with futuristic weaponry creates a doctrine of resilience, making India not just strong, but unpredictable to its adversaries. But perhaps the greatest evidence of India's balance of tradition and modernity is in its people. Walk down the streets of Delhi, Mumbai, or Bangalore, and you will find a young generation coding AI systems, trading crypto, and launching startups while still touching the feet of their elders, celebrating Diwali with full devotion, and chanting mantras before big decisions. This coexistence of modern ambition with traditional grounding makes Indians unique in the global arena. They carry their roots with pride, yet their vision stretches across the stars. That is the untold secret many outsiders do not understand. India's rise is not an accident. It is not a result of blindly copying the West. It is the product of centuries of learning how to balance what must be preserved and what must be pursued. That balance has given India a stability and power that the world cannot easily shake. This is why, when we talk about India's journey to becoming a superpower, we must acknowledge this deep-rooted ability to walk confidently with one foot in the past and the other in the future. This dual strength is not just a path to power, it is a shield that ensures India will never lose its identity, even as it becomes one of the strongest nations on earth. When we look at how India became so powerful, one of the top untold secrets is its ability to balance soft power with hard power in ways the world did not anticipate. For decades, nations focused only on their military might, their weapons stockpiles, and their raw displays of dominance, thinking that tanks and missiles alone could secure influence. But India took a different route. It understood early on that true power comes from a combination of strength and respect, fear and admiration, capability and culture. This dual approach of soft power and hard power has allowed India to rise in a way that is not just visible on the battlefield, but also in the hearts of people across the globe. Soft power for India has always been its strongest hidden weapon. For centuries, India has influenced the world not by conquest, but by sharing its culture, values, and philosophies. From yoga and meditation to Bollywood and cuisine, India has exported ideas, practices that have touched lives in every corner of the world. In modern times, this cultural influence has only grown stronger. Yoga, for example, is practiced by millions in the United States, Europe, and beyond. Indian festivals are celebrated worldwide, and Indian films attract global audiences. This is not entertainment alone, it is influence, and influence is power. When people embrace your way of life, they build an emotional connection with your nation, and that connection translates into long-term goodwill and respect. At the same time, India has not ignored hard power. It has built one of the most capable militaries in the world with nuclear weapons, advanced missiles, and a massive defense infrastructure. It has invested in modernizing its forces, building indigenous weapons systems, and creating doctrines that can adapt to 21st century warfare. The Indian Army, Navy, and Air Force are not just large, they are increasingly technologically sophisticated and prepared for multi-front challenges. India's rise in space defense, cyber warfare, and missile technology shows that it is not a passive power depending only on culture and diplomacy. It can and will defend itself with force when necessary. This combination of cultural attraction and military readiness makes India unique because it is not overly dependent on one side of the equation. Consider how India has handled global crises and conflicts. When neighboring countries attempt to provoke it, India responds with strength, surgical strikes, and demonstrations of military capability, reminding adversaries that it cannot be bullied. But when it deals with international diplomacy, India extends a hand of friendship, offers humanitarian aid, and positions itself as a responsible leader. This balance of offering peace while being prepared for war keeps India respected by allies and feared by enemies. It avoids the trap of being seen only as an aggressive power or only as a peaceful voice. Instead, it embodies both depending on what the situation demands. Another layer to this secret is how India uses technology as a bridge between soft and hard power. Its digital infrastructure, global IT services, and dominance in software exports build global dependence on Indian talent. That is soft power in the form of technological attraction. At the same time, the same talent is used to develop cybersecurity systems, artificial intelligence for defense, and futuristic military applications. That is hard power born out of intellectual strength. So the same pool of knowledge and innovation serves both the cultural and the military side, strengthening India's global position from every angle. This duality also extends into India's relationships with other nations. For developing countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, India represents hope, partnership, and cultural kinship. They see India as a country that understands their struggles and offers cooperation without imposing conditions. That is soft power at its finest. For rivals or nations that challenge India's sovereignty, however, India is quick to remind them of its hard power through border security, military drills, and defense posturing. This adaptability ensures that India cannot be boxed into a single image or role on the world stage. It is both a friend and a fighter, a cultural leader and a military force, depending on what the world requires. But what makes this balance so powerful is that it is not forced. It is natural to India's identity. For thousands of years, Indian civilization has believed in peace, non-violence, and the concept of the world as one family. That is why its soft power comes across as authentic, not manufactured. At the same time, Indian history is filled with warriors, kingdoms, and empires that defended themselves fiercely. That is why its hard power is equally authentic. The world sees both sides as real, not artificial images built for diplomacy. This authenticity is what makes the balance unshakable and effective. In the end, India's untold secret is that it does not lean entirely on one side of the power spectrum. It does not seek to dominate only through fear, nor does it try to win over hearts while remaining militarily weak. It has mastered the art of weaving both together, creating a form of influence that is as cultural as it is strategic, as peaceful as it is prepared for war. This balance of soft and hard power is what gives India its unique edge and explains why its rise is not just visible, but unstoppable in the eyes of the world. Another untold secret behind how India became so powerful lies in its extraordinary demographic strength and the way it has learned to harness it. For years, the world saw India's population as a burden, a challenge too big to manage, a ticking time bomb that would drown the country in unemployment and poverty. But India turned this supposed weakness into one of its greatest assets. In 2025, while much of the developed world is struggling with aging populations, shrinking workforces, and declining birth rates, India stands tall with the youngest and most energetic workforce on the planet. This is not just a number on paper. This is the foundation of a nation's rise, because power is not only about technology and weapons, but also about people. And India has billions of them ready to shape the future. The first advantage of this demographic strength is economic productivity. A young population means more workers, more innovators, more entrepreneurs, and more consumers. India has understood that growth is not sustainable if it depends only on exports or government spending. True growth comes when a large, young, and ambitious middle class drives demand from within. With hundreds of millions of young people earning, spending, and innovating, India has created a domestic market so massive that global corporations cannot afford to ignore it. Companies from Silicon Valley to Tokyo line up to invest in India, not just because of cheap labor, but because India is a marketplace where consumption is growing faster than almost anywhere else in the world. This massive demographic energy fuels India's economy like rocket fuel. Another dimension to this strength is how India invests in its youth. Education, skill development, and digital training programs have become a national focus. With schemes like Digital India and Skill India, the government has empowered millions of young people to step into the future equipped with modern skills. This generation is not just working in call centers or low-wage industries. They are building apps, running startups, coding artificial intelligence systems, and leading innovation in fields like biotech, space tech, and renewable energy. They are globally competitive, and they carry with them not only their technical expertise, but also their cultural confidence. When you have a young generation that is skilled, ambitious, and deeply aware of its identity, you have a power that cannot be easily replicated by any other nation. At the same time, this youthful population also contributes to India's defense and strategic posture. A young nation has the energy, manpower, and determination to sustain a strong military presence. While countries in Europe and East Asia worry about finding enough young people to fill their armies, India has a steady stream of recruits who are not only physically capable, but also technologically trained. This allows India to modernize its armed forces without the fear of demographic decline weakening its ranks. The very youth who are writing codes in Bangalore are also piloting drones, managing cyber defense units, and manning high-tech missile systems in the Indian military. That balance of civilian innovation and military readiness rooted in a young demographic makes India's rise more sustainable than many other nations that may shine for a while, but decline when their populations age. What makes this secret even more powerful is the cultural mindset of the youth. Indian youth are not simply mimicking Western culture. They are redefining what it means to be modern while staying rooted in tradition. They wear suits in the office, but traditional attire at festivals. They code futuristic technologies while still praying at temples or practicing yoga. This dual identity gives them resilience because they are not lost in the pursuit of modernity. They know who they are. A nation whose youth carry both confidence and clarity is a nation that cannot be easily shaken by external cultural influence. That inner strength is one of the silent powers of India's demographic dividend. Moreover, the Indian diaspora, much of which consists of young, highly educated professionals, amplifies this demographic strength globally. Indians are at the helm of some of the world's biggest companies, from Google to Microsoft, and they hold key positions in governments, universities, and research institutions worldwide. They not only send back remittances, but also act as bridges of influence, ensuring India's voice echoes in global decision-making spaces. This external presence of Indian talent ensures that India's demographic advantage is not just confined within its borders, but is spread across the globe like an invisible network of power. The world underestimated this secret because it assumed population equals poverty. But India flipped the narrative. It showed that population, when educated, skilled, and empowered, equals productivity, innovation, and global influence. While other countries are shrinking and worrying about who will take care of their elderly in the future, India is confident that its young force will carry it into a new era of strength. Demographics are destiny, and India's destiny is being shaped by the unstoppable energy of its youth. This is one of the deepest and least acknowledged reasons why India is not just surviving in the global order of 2025, but thriving as a power that cannot be ignored. Another untold secret behind how India became so powerful lies in its strategic mastery of alliances and partnerships without losing independence. Most nations that rise on the global stage do so by attaching themselves closely to a bigger power, by becoming dependent on someone else's system or protection. But India played this game differently. It understood that in the 21st century, power is not about being someone's follower, but about being a player who can stand alone while still collaborating with others when it benefits its national interests. This balance of being independent yet deeply connected has allowed India to rise in a way that the world didn't expect. Look at how India has managed its relationships with major global powers. With the United States, India has built strong economic, defense, and technology ties. The US sees India as a counterweight to China, a market of over 1 billion people, and a hub of talent. But even with all of these connections, India never allowed itself to become a junior partner. It never signed away its sovereignty for aid or military protection. Instead, it accepted cooperation where it made sense and pushed back where it didn't. When America tried to pressure India on buying oil from Russia or making certain foreign policy choices, India stood firm. That refusal to bend showed the world that India values partnership but will never trade away its independence. This has earned it respect even from nations that disagree with its positions. The same applies to Russia. India has had a historic friendship with Russia going back decades, especially in defense and energy. While the world expected India to move fully into the American camp, it surprised everyone by keeping its ties with Russia strong. India continues to buy weapons, oil, and technology from Russia, but it does so on its own terms. This balancing act demonstrates India's ability to extract benefits from both sides of a global divide without becoming enslaved to either. Very few nations have the credibility and the diplomatic skill to do this, and India has perfected it. China presents another example of India's mastery in alliances. On one hand, China is a rival, competing for regional dominance and often clashing on borders. On the other hand, India engages with China on trade platforms, global climate discussions, and multilateral forums like BRICS. While the West often paints nations as either allies or enemies, India has shown that in this new age, you can have both competition and cooperation at the same time. This ability to deal with rivals without closing doors entirely is what makes India so strategically powerful. It plays the game on multiple boards at once, never locking itself into a single camp. India has also built deep connections with the global South. Nations in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia see India as a voice that understands their challenges. Unlike Western powers that often impose conditions or lecture about governance, India approaches these countries as equals, offering technology, medicine, infrastructure projects, and education opportunities. During global crises such as the pandemic, India supplied vaccines to over 100 countries, earning trust and goodwill that no weapon could ever buy. This soft yet strategic use of partnerships has created a sphere of influence that spreads far beyond its immediate region. These countries now look to India not just as a friend, but as a leader who represents their interests on the global stage. At the same time, India strengthened its regional partnerships through initiatives like BioMSTEC and its leadership role in the Indian Ocean. By engaging with neighbors like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan, India ensures that its immediate surroundings are not easily swayed by foreign powers. It invests in infrastructure, trade, and security cooperation, creating an environment where its neighbors see more benefit in aligning with India than with outsiders. This is the kind of neighborhood management that global powers often ignore, but India quietly mastered it, making its rise much smoother. What makes this secret so powerful is that India has done it without building a colonial mindset. It does not force weaker nations into submission. Instead, it offers partnership while respecting sovereignties. This approach has created a global network of trust, and in a world where trust is rare, this is an invaluable form of power. While other nations use their alliances as chains to tie down smaller countries, India uses its alliances as bridges to bring others closer. That is why even nations that are politically aligned with other powers still keep a window open for India. This strategic independence is not just a diplomatic trick. It is rooted in India's civilizational philosophy. From the teachings of the Arthashastra to the principle of non-alignment during the Cold War, India has always believed that true power comes from being able to say yes or no without fear. In today's multipolar world, that philosophy has turned into a powerful asset. India doesn't need to beg for allies, it chooses them. It doesn't need to fear isolation, it creates its own networks. This level of freedom is rare, and it's one of the reasons India has risen to power so effectively. By 2025. This ability to maintain alliances without dependency has made India a unique kind of superpower. It is connected everywhere, but controlled by no one. It benefits from East and West, North and South, while still protecting its sovereignty. That balance, that refusal to be owned by any single camp, is one of the untold secrets of India's rise. And it is why the world has no choice but to take India seriously as a force that stands tall in its own right. So when we look at the journey, when we connect every dot, it becomes clear that India's rise to power was never about luck, and it was never about shortcuts. It was about resilience, about learning to turn every challenge into an opportunity, about finding balance between tradition and modernity, about knowing when to show soft power and when to unleash hard power, about trusting its youth to build the future, and about building alliances without ever surrendering independence. That is how India went from being underestimated to becoming unstoppable. The truth is, the world is no longer asking if India will lead, but how far India will go in reshaping the global order. And this is the lesson for every one of us. Power is never handed to you. It is built piece by piece through vision, discipline, and belief. If a nation once dismissed as weak can rise to become a global force, then every one of us has the ability to rise above our circumstances, to build strength, and to define our destiny on our own terms. I want to leave you with this. Believe in your journey. Protect your vision and never let the world's doubts become your limits. India's story is proof that nothing is impossible when you commit to growth with courage and consistency. Good luck to you on your own path. Keep pushing, keep believing, and thank you for listening to this message today.